encourages work, discourages family, puts them into schools that don't succeed, and keeps them in neighborhoods that are unsafe. I want to replace the welfare system. My good friends in the Democratic Party seem to like the bureaucrats so much, they don't care what happens to the poor in the tender mercies of these bureaucracies.
They are claiming that they, too, revise the welfare system, but that they don't want to cut out its funding.
Well, but they're saying to you, we really need to get to the balance. I think I actually heard Senator Daschle say tonight, we really need to get to a balanced budget. It was an exciting moment. My answer is fine. I hope that Senator Daschle and Congressman Gephardt and the President will introduce a budget that gets to balance over 7 years. We will make it in order. We'll bring it up for a vote. But it seems to me they have an obligation, not just to nitpick and be negative and carp. They have an obligation to offer an alternative path to a balanced budget.
All right, let me ask you this. Congressman Gephardt asked you, in the spirit apparently of compromise and conciliation and all of that, to sit down and negotiate a solution to what he called America's health care crisis. To sit down with the Democrats and negotiate a solution, even if it's an incremental, step-by-step sort of thing. You prepared to do that? What's your response?
We'd be delighted to do that. We sit down every week with Democrats. We had Democrats vote for virtually every one of our proposals. In some, we had, you know, litigation reform as it relates to strike law firms.
He's talking specifically about the health care crisis.
So let me give you a specific example for a second. On litigation reform for strike law firms, we had 330 votes yes, 99 no. Now my point's this. We work with Democrats every week. It just seems that the Democratic leadership is trapped into some kind of a small left-wing clique that's unable to sit down and work. I'd be very happy to sit down with Dick Gephardt. I think he's a smart man. I think he has a lot of ideas. I've been co-chairman for the last 3 years with Congressman Bob Michael of our task force on health. We have a bunch of ideas. We just passed a 30% tax deductibility for the self-employed to let them begin to buy health insurance with tax deduction. The argument in the Post this morning was Democrats down at the White House asking the president to veto the 30% deductibility for the small businesses. Now, I'm just saying, if Mr. Gephardt is serious, and if he's willing to sit down with us and talk about serious incremental reform, portability, no more preconditions, antitrust exemption for hospitals, medical savings accounts, if he's willing to do that, we can go to work in May, and we can produce by this summer some good things. Frankly, if he's not willing to do that, we're going to work with moderate and conservative Democrats, and we're going to produce the reforms this summer anyway.
Why would somebody want to sit down with you? And this gets to basic Newt Gingrich. Why would somebody want to sit down with you who you call names? You call left-wing, for instance. What reason would somebody want to sit down?
To prove they're not left-wing.
I beg your pardon?
To prove they're not left-wing.
But why would they want to sit down if you're offering them that? In effect, it sounds like you're offering them you can surrender to us or not.
Bob, you're a very sophisticated and clever observer of this building. Now, in terms of name-calling, in the last 90 days, if I'm willing to sit down with the Democrats, I think I'm expressing a willingness to go beyond name-calling. So I don't think that in terms of the names I use are ideological. Are they for big government? Are they for higher taxes? Are their ideological views left-wing? And I think by any reasonable standard, it's fair to say the Democratic leadership today is as liberal as it's ever been. I mean, I don't think that's a pejorative. I think they would say that. So I don't think that's name-calling to say of somebody who wants to raise taxes, who likes bureaucracy, who believes in centralized power,
but wait a minute. They would not agree at all that they want to raise taxes, that they believe in centralized power.
Why did they do it? You're talking about the people who voted for the tax increase of 1990, which I opposed. You're talking about people who voted for the tax increase of 1993, which I opposed.
Excuse me, the one 1993, let's get to that first. Okay. They say that, in fact, almost everybody paid less tax. Only the rich paid more.
Wait. Almost everybody paid less tax except the people who paid more tax, and there were enough of those people to defeat the Democrats who went home to say, you're really not paying more tax, so why are you mad at us? I mean, my mother called me last Monday and said my mom and dad had just figured out what the tax and Social Security meant because they'd finally done their taxes. They were quite unhappy with the Democrats who'd raised their tax on Social Security.
You're talking about affluent Social Security representatives.
Well, if you regard $22,000 as a single person as affluent, that's where the rate started to go up.
Gentlemen, we're going to cut this debate off right here. You probably won't solve it just now. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to talk to the Speaker about what to expect from the next 100 days.
And now we resume our conversation with Speaker of the House, Newt Gingrich. Here's CNN's Frank Sesno.
From the Rayburn Room in the U.S. Capitol, we're talking with the Speaker of the House, Newt Gingrich, and I'm joined by my colleague, Bob Franken.
Let's talk, Mr. Speaker, about the entire circumstance of this evening. Your critics are saying, who does he think he is? A half hour of television time, it's never happened before. What is this about? What does it mean?
Well, I think it's part of the innovation and the change and the newness. Just as we announced tonight we're going to sell a building and we're going to privatize at least one parking lot, we're trying to change things. And it seemed to me that We have a real message for the country based on the House Republican Party's achievement. We did keep our word. We did pass 9 out of the 10 items and voted on all 10 items. And the next stage is the budget. And the question is, was it fair to share with the country in a direct way where we're going?
Well, the Democrats say all you really achieved was this frenetic legislative exercise, that in terms of actual accomplishment, there has been little outside of process that has really been accomplished. What is this about?
Well, I would say, first of all, having passed more bills in the first 100 days than any Democratic Congress since 1933, that it's a start. I mean, you can't say on the one hand, here's the American constitutional system, House, Senate, President. You got everything done in the House, so what? I mean, so what? You now have a whole bunch of things over in the Senate which they're going to work on.
But you've gone through with blinding speed so fast that there's been a constant complaint that nobody really knows what he's voting about.
But that's just only Democrats saying
No,
that.
that's Republicans too.
The fact is, these bills were initially drafted last July and August. They were pledged in September. We campaigned on them in October and November. We worked on them from then until they were passed. They're now going to the Senate. Most of them, my guess is 65 or 70% are going to come out of the Senate. And you're going to see us have changed substantially the way Washington operated before the end of this year.
Mr. Speaker, let me come back to the idea of your giving a speech like this evening, because it really is an historic moment, unprecedented. Some might put it rather indelicately and say, what's he doing? Out to grab power? Others might say, thinks he's more the Prime Minister than the Speaker of the House. How do you respond to those that might suggest that this was an inappropriate way for you to communicate to the American people?
I mean, I thought, in the first place, I think any way you can communicate with the American people in this age of clutter and negativism is a good thing to do. The question you have to ask is, was it a serious speech? Did we outline, as I think we did, the serious problems we face, the serious steps we're going to take? And if you do have a majority in the House, which has been doing, I think everybody agrees, a historically unprecedented job, then isn't it fair for that majority to say to the American people, here's the next big challenge. Here's what we need to do as a country.
Some Republicans I've spoken with have suggested that they believe that you are keeping much too high a profile. Do you intend to lower it?
I intend to work with all the members of the House Republican Party to get everything we can done. I don't, the question is, if you're chosen as Speaker and if you represent the 230 members who got all this work done and who kept the contract with America, isn't it then appropriate to report to the country on having kept your word and to outline for the country where you want to go? I mean, it just seems, this is a unique historic moment. I don't know that it's a precedent for anything. We've never had anything like this year.
Exactly right. And the profile that you've kept has allowed people to make some very strong opinions about you, and I'd like to ask you about that. New poll we had today showed that 68% said they thought that you were saying things that others were afraid to say, that they feel that you've gotten a lot done, that you've been effective, but they also feel that you're too extreme and that you lack compassion, How do you respond to that?
Well, I think when the first Time magazine cover you get after you're Speaker is looking like Scrooge and entitled, How Mean Will Gingrich's Congress Be to the Poor?
So you're blaming the media for this?
I mean, a large part of it, sure.
You don't think it's what people are hearing themselves?
No.
I mean, you're on C-SPAN, you're on CNN,
sure.
You're on...
But a very large part of the initial coverage, I was the Grinch that stole Christmas on the Newsweek cover.
School lunch program?
School lunch program, we increased spending 4.5% a year.
Let's address that a second. You may do that, but the critics say that you still don't keep up with inflation, the cost of food when you do that.
The critics are supporting...
So effectively, if they're correct, that's a cut.
No, first place, the critics don't give us any credit.
First of all, is that accurate or not, though? Are you keeping up with...
Yes, we keep up with them. We more than keep up with inflation.
Not with the price of food.
We more than keep up with inflation.
Well,
I mean, they have a... Look, the liberals have this formula that says, if you don't have this much more money and you only have this much more money, this is a cut. There's no other place in America where a $10 increase is a $15 cut, other than Washington.
Well, there is if inflation has gone up even more than that.
There's not a state government in this country that would have a 4.5% increase count as a cut. I mean, it's only in Washington that the liberals managed to institute this bizarre...
You don't want to address that. If the price of food goes up faster than the amount of money that you're allocating is an increase, doesn't that effectively become a cut?
What it says, first of all, is, and the governors were adamant about this, can you manage it more efficiently at the state level? Can you, in fact, cut the cost of bureaucracy? I mean, the real reason the Democrats have been screaming, particularly the liberal Democrats are the only ones who are screaming, is that we're cutting out the Washington bureaucracy. And the fact is, we increased the amount of money directed to the poorest students. We do raise a question. If your child is in a $7,000 or $9,000 a year private academy, should they, in fact, be getting a subsidized lunch? I mean, is this, if we're going to balance the budget, should we automatically give everybody, no matter how their income is, a government subsidy, which, by the way, is not free? That subsidy is on the back of the children of America, because we're borrowing the money, and they're going to pay for it the rest of their life.
We need to turn to some things.